Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our sanctuary. So glad you're here. And welcome to those of you who are joining us on YouTube. You're always welcome, and coming from across the continent as well as perhaps locally. So very glad. So we have got some things to talk about that are upcoming, and some of them you've heard about, some of them you may not have. Really, first of all, I have to say that if you were here for our Juneteenth celebration, I hope you recognize what a fantastic day that was. We had such a good time, and the food, oh my heavens. People were here until after 3 o'clock, just staying and eating and enjoying and just having. It was a community event, and everyone was enjoying what they did. And I'm so grateful to all of those people who are participated. I could go on and on about that because there were so many people. I am going to elaborate on Sunday when we have even more people to hear that they are being congratulated and welcomed and gratitude expressed for. Anyway, thank you all for coming, if you came and if you participated. It was terrific. And of course, all of our volunteers always do a really, really wonderful job, so I want to make sure that we appreciate everyone. We also have something coming up this weekend, which is going to be an entirely different kind of event. Reverend Valerie is teaching a hypnosis certification course, and there's a flyer out there that gives you a lot more information. And if you're even remotely interested and have a question, you can get in touch with Reverend Valerie. The information is on the flyer. But it's basically all day, both Friday and Saturday, and you can enable yourself to be certified. But I think you can also take the course if you just want to know a little bit more about the process. I think my husband is not interested in being certified, but I think he is interested in knowing more. I don't know if he's going to come, but if you're in that situation, talk to Reverend Valerie and see how she can help you understand that, because it's really a cool idea. It's sort of related to the book that I'm talking about today, which is P.P. Quimby, who sort of introduced the whole concept of hypnosis into science of mind, or the mesmerism thing. Now, we're also going to have the following Sunday, not the 23rd, but the 30th, we are going to have Pascal, and he's back on June the 30th at 12:30, so it's right here in the sanctuary. If you were here before, the music and the sound and the visual was just simply gorgeous. And so if you are interested at all in what he does, and what he has created is a program using the words of Ernest Holmes. And so he's doing that with music, and it's very creative, and he really, really is a beautiful man, and he wants to just share the gift that he has and the gift with as many people as possible. I think there's a flyer out there for that as well. Science of Mind lesson on Sundays continues at 10:15 until 10:45, and it's a way to get, as we say, a taste of Ernest Holmes before you come into the service. Living the Science of Mind is the book that we're going through on that class in Sunday mornings. Now, we continue to offer the book groups. On Tuesday morning, they are reading the Michael Beckwith book. They're continuing, they're on a different book now. They just switched to The Grass is Greener Here, and a different book altogether. But they're continuing that on Tuesday morning. Now, the Wednesday morning class, which part of my book reading, Quantum Healing, we met today, but we will not meet next Wednesday because I'm having a medical thing, and so we will not meet next Wednesday. So if you were ever thinking about coming to that, next Wednesday's not the day. That's June the 26th. The yoga class is also on break. They did not meet yesterday and will not meet next Tuesday either. And so it will be back on July the 2nd. So with summer underway, Mark Ruth has been actively pursuing divine dining. We have several events that are already being planned, and there's time to do one. So if you're even thinking about something, if you have a little idea, it never helps to just say, what do you think about this? Maybe, would you think that would work? Even if it's only got 4 or 5 people that comes. We have had those events. where somebody just gathered to do a quiet dinner, or they liked an evening of games and had people, just whatever it is you like to do, maybe you find another group who are interested in doing the same thing. So think about it, put on your hat and see what kind of community event that you might come up with. And you can always talk with Mark about it on Sunday. He isn't here today. So we are also looking ahead for having the Hidden Treasure Yard Sale in September. It's still being organized, and so they're really very much looking for people who will help organize the event. If you've ever been a part of it, it's a big job, and it takes a lot of different people to contribute to that. So just sign up, and you don't have to commit to anything at this point. But if you're interested, let somebody know that you're interested, and you will be contacted about that. And so volunteers of every stripe hold us together in ways that I don't know that we always appreciate when we just sit there or just partake of hospitality and have all that stuff. There are people behind the scenes making things happen, and they deserve our gratitude and our respect, really, for their willingness to give of themselves. So I honor everyone, regardless of what you do. It is appreciated, and please know there are plenty of people who are saying thank you to you every day. So please know that. And I am the speaker today, and so I step into that part of the spotlight. And let's begin, as we like to begin everything, by coming together in consciousness and knowing that the power and presence that is all around us and through us and certainly within us, we're calling on that in this moment. Remembering that this moment is the only moment any of us ever have. So I allow in this moment, as I take that breath and I exhale, and relax as I exhale, understanding an exhale is a relaxing breath. And so I settle into the moment, slow my mind down, and allow myself to simply sit with the idea that that presence, I call it God, but it's a feeling of presence within me that anchors me to the present moment and allows me to simply feel the divine moving all through me that is always flowing through me. But as I allow myself to know it, to feel it, to be a part of it, it is an intimate way for me to connect and for me to know and call on that power, to tune my ears to all that I hear that is just perfect for me to hear right now and in the moments to come. And I call on Spirit within me, flowing through me, to listen and listen deeply and recognize what within me is responding to some idea that I can use, that I can contemplate, that I can build on, because that is how I grow, that is how I become more myself, and that is the way life works. And so in gratitude for knowing that the truth I speak is the truth, and it is the way Spirit works. And so I just simply allow this word to be as I release my word in this moment and say, and so it is. So I have been thinking about the topic from last week and the topic from this week all week long. Of course, this is in between thinking about Juneteenth, maybe while I'm thinking about Juneteenth. All of these things, because there's just sort of parallel things sometimes that go on. We know we can only do one thing at a time. I try not to do that, but I think I try to do lots of things at once. But I didn't burn the beans, so let's just start out with that. I didn't have any of that. But I have to resist the urge to, well, do this and then do that and get that going. But meanwhile, all of the things I'm doing, I'm thinking about what's in my mind. So in preparing specifically for this day, for this talk, I realized, as early as Monday, that while I had intended to go through the book as Irvin Seal is showing the work of P.P. Quimby. His neighbors called him Park, so let's just call him Park. Parkhurst is Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, Park. As Park put that forward, but it's the next chapter. I went through 1 through 4 last week, and it's that 5th chapter that is called Living in Two Worlds, or just the Two Worlds. And I realized that that really says, it encompasses what I want to say about Quimby up to this point. And that doesn't mean there's not other things, but it's where my own thinking has coalesced. So let's just say that up to this point, and I will sort of repeat a few things from last week, P.P. Quimby was born in 1802. And most of the times that we're talking about is later more like the 1850s. And he lived longer than that, but he really he was a clockmaker. He was fascinated by mesmerism, which is what hypnosis was known at then, named after somebody named Mesmer in Europe. And it was really mesmerism was becoming popular somewhere in this time. Quimby was just different from the way other people thought. And from the beginning, he stumbled around, I think, trying this and trying that. And he met this man who is Lucius, is the man's name. He was a younger man. And he and Lucius worked so incredibly well together. Lucius is, or was, a willing hypnosis subject. Now, Reverend Valerie will tell you no one can be hypnotized against their will. Now, what Ernest Holmes says is that we, all of us, are hypnotized by the world because we've allowed ourselves to just embody that. But no one can put you in a trance if you don't want that. So keep in mind that that's true. But Lucius was someone who very easily went into the trance. And I will say that the work that Valerie has done here, when she did some things for our Teen Tea some time ago, she hypnotized a whole group of people up on that stage, but there was one person, they're sitting in chairs, and there was one person who went. That was someone who was more open to being hypnotized by reading this and reading that. And it was very evident if you were sitting out in the audience that this person was more likely to be hypnotized. Well, Lucius was like that. He just went into it. And so because of Lucius and the things that he would ask Lucius questions, and he would have Lucius there when he was treating patients, he could just see things and understand things and be in touch with the patient. And that is what Park called him, patient. And as I said last week, Park was very annoyed at the medical establishment because he thought they were prescribing these tonics and things that weren't doing anybody any good, and they didn't understand what was going on in the person's body. Quimby also believed that Jesus was the one who really taught us how to do this. He could read the person. He had that gift of being able to know what they needed, and he just said words to them that made them whole. And that's what Quimby did. That was his aim, that was his goal. Now, he was dealing with people who had physical ailments. So the whole success is that they didn't have it anymore. That was what success was. And he worked so hard at this, and eventually, I don't know that he actually needed Lucius as much. He got to the point that he was like a medium himself. I'm thinking medium like and do a seance, and the medium is allowing and hearing things. He became like that, and he could feel what the person was feeling. Now, that's an incredible thing to say, but that's what he said. So when he was in that space, he saw and understood things that were about this person. And he told them that what they were thinking about it was not true. And he told them what was true. And all he did and all he used were words. And he healed people that way, but he never thought of himself as being the healer, because he thought that Jesus was not the healer. He simply told them the truth. God is the only one. That God within us is the only one that is the one. And he goes on to talk about his understanding of this. And this is in the mid-19th century. This man came to this with a Christian background. He quoted Bible and he understood this, but he never saw things the way everybody else did. And I think that's remarkable. So when he starts talking about two worlds, I really appreciate the idea that you all are listening and listening to things that are different from the way we've thought about things. And he thought that he read something, and Irvin Seal goes on to say that he saw people in two ways. I mean, the way primitive man, meaning almost prehistory or early history, saw things was what you see is what you believe, and there's nothing else. And that's one world. If I don't see it, then I don't believe it. So when they had gods, then they made their gods out of wood or stone because they could worship that God. They couldn't worship something they couldn't see. Now, what Irvin Seal goes on to say is that civilized man does something similar. We know that we can't see everything, but in our imagination, we put a physical picture to an idea. So if I say rose, you picture a rose. We are attached to the physical. And that's the point that Irvin Seal is saying. We don't allow these things to exist for us in a way that is just that idea. We want to have concrete things associated with it. So when we talk about we have a choice, we have an imagination, we have this energy, they're vague. We have to put an image with it to understand. We use metaphors, and in the book that we're reading, Quantum Healing, and the book, Deepak Chopra is just a genius at putting these wonderful metaphors in there. It's like when, I guess they're similes, like when, and he gives these examples that help you, understand the concept. And so what Irvin Seal is saying, that because of that and because of the conventional Christian way of looking at things, heaven and hell are places. They're real places. They're not states of mind, because states of mind are vague, and it's not some place that I go. So when we're talking about when you die, you think of yourself as going to some place. And so occasionally he said that in this physical place, and this is what he's quoting, what he's saying is when somebody says to anyone, whatever is happening to you, if I say, you know, you have this pain in your back, or you've got an infection, you've got anything, I said, well, it's all in your mind. That's so dismissive. Even if it may be literally true, it's dismissive. And so Quimby understood that, yes, it may be in your mind, but it's dismissive to say that. So he wants to help you see what it is you're feeling and why you don't want to feel that way, and he can tell you exactly how it is and what's going on in your body. And so there is, in Luke, it says, let us take heed, therefore, that the light which is in us be not darkness. Well, who understands that? Light is not darkness. You have to start fathoming what he's talking about. And that's the two worlds that Irvin Seal is speaking of. He says that your light, if you think of light as being your knowledge and the transformation of your knowledge, then you understand that darkness is ignorance. So it gives a whole fuller explanation of that one piece of scripture. And so that is what Quimby did. He saw light as knowledge. And at some point in there, he called it science. And he continually referred to it as science because it's knowledge and fact as opposed to how you feel or what you think. Now, I think that word is important because Quimby is an early influence of all of New Thought that filtered down to Ernest Holmes. So when he first called his teaching religious science, you can understand where that came from. It's not science as in chemistry, science as in physics, science as in astronomy. It's science in that you can prove it, that you can set this up and have it be the same every time. That's the science. And so it is, I think I found out in my own mind at least, that he could easily have gotten that understanding of the word science from Quimby. And so he goes on to talk about the fact that the parables of Jesus were ways in which Jesus communicated in everyday stories these deeper concepts. But there is a point in there where Jesus says, let them who have ears to hear, hear. And those who have eyes to see, see. So you either see that light of knowledge or you see darkness. And you may take the parables literally. And that is one of the reasons Irvin Seal wrote a book about the parables, so that he can help explain what they were. And so for Quimby, his light was increasing with all of his patients. He was learning as he goes. He was learning from the patients about how finding the right thing to say enabled him to help more people. By the end of his life, he was seeing as many as 500 people a day, patients. His son George was somewhat resentful about that because he thinks it led to his early death. And that because he was overworked and he wasn't recognizing within himself, he wasn't paying attention to the physical in his own situation because he had to have been really, really exhausted because of the way he did. But he said that ideas, and he goes on to say that the world, the way that Jesus referred to the world, most people think of as earth, as heaven, the world as we see it, the globe, this place. And Jesus meant in your mind, what you're thinking in your human mind. And so when he says heaven and he's talking of another place, he's talking about that beyond. And so by the time you work through all of this, it comes through that everything is there, but we are limited in our own understanding. And that's the way in which we're limited. We're limited by being so tied to the physical. And all of us are. We all are, no matter, we can grow in understanding, but we all are. He said that, this is Quimby's words, I, like others, once believed that Jesus came to save man from eternal damnation and to point out the way to another world. But my practice with the sick has produced an entire change in my mind in regard to this subject. If any of Jesus' truth lingers in the religion of the world, it would be seen in the sick who are just on the verge of another world as they believe. And yet I have learned by sitting with them that the religious belief is the worst torment that they have. Although they may say that they rejoice and are ready to go, they're really afraid and don't show much joy when I tell them they will not die. Just as a condemned criminal feels when kneeling upon his coffin when he hears the word pardon. He saw how people were and the way they were divided, and he thought that this was a big mistake, and that's what he set out to do. So he kept learning from how people were, and he's trying to transform them in from that. Finally, he goes on to say that when we understand grief and when we understand worry and how it affects our body, when we understand that, and that's what Quimby would do with his patients, helps them relieve that. Remember, I told this story last time, if you were here, about the woman who was dying of consumption because of her grief over her husband dying on a ship. And Quimby could visualize what happened. And so he talked her through that to help her to realize that this was just a reaction to this story that she's telling herself, that grief and sadness is not what he's feeling. It's just your moment to step into your own divinity is the word I would use. And so understanding how we can respond and make ourselves sick over what we're stewing over, what we're worrying with, that is what Quimby talked about. And so while he's talking about sickness, I'm also thinking beyond that kind of sickness. I'm thinking about how we deal with everyday life. And one of my personal prayers is variations of, show me the way. Show me the way and help me understand situations that I'm in and how I can respond to that. And I also specifically say, I want to have that guidance within me that shows me the words to say or not say. That is my prayer probably almost every day. But that doesn't mean that these situations don't come up. I did not burn the beans. I just want to, I did not. However, the microwave does still stink a little bit. It does. So, and it's going to go away, but I'm still working on that. But I know in the last couple of days, I've had situations that arose that I wasn't expecting in the slightest, and I had this feeling of feeling less than in some way because of what happened. And so as I process this, at night when I write in my gratitude journal, I think about those things. And what I realized is that response didn't have anything to do with what happened. Do you know what a gift that is? That when you react to something that happens, remember this phrase, it's not what happens to you, it's what you think about what happens to you. And what you think about it is yours. And it comes from something within you. And why do we think something else? Generally, it's some belief that we have that's hidden from us. It's unconscious. And Carl Jung, when he was doing his psychology thing, he's one of the first ones that talked about how we deal with those kinds of things, how we deal with all of the things we're not ready to face. And he had several popular ones. One is denial. And denial may be one of the most popular. I didn't do that. That wasn't me. Now, Charlotte may have said this one thing or another, but can you believe she said that? Can you believe that? I can't believe anybody would have said that. How outrageous. What's wrong with Charlotte? So the question we ask ourselves is, why am I responding to whatever's going on in Charlotte's mind? Because it matters not. Charlotte may have said something totally inappropriate, but I'm the one who received it in the way that I did. So I'm denying any responsibility for that. Or there are any number of other denials that are very popular. And some of the most serious denials, and one of those is repression, and when something happens that's so traumatic that we push it down, that we pretend as if it never happened. And that's much more serious and needs to be handled well. And people who've had trauma, who've had accidents, who've had different things happen to them, that's something that can happen. And it's actually, in one sense of the word, it's considered to be a healthy reaction because you're preserving you. You're keeping yourself safe. But see, that's what any of them do. You are preserving your own you-ness, your own me-ness of how I am. And if you grow in awareness so that you recognize, what did I do and why did I do that? Only then, when you ask yourself that question, why did I react to what Charlotte said? Because it's not true, and it had nothing to do with me in the second place. So why did I do that? So in my case, the fact that I can see that in a much bigger picture just makes it all sort of dissipate. And I release it and just let it go. But it has to have that light of knowledge to shine on it. I can't push it into the darkness that it's somebody else's fault. As soon as I do that, I'm shutting myself off from me, from that vital part of me that wants to be more than I am. And so rising in situations like that might not happen in the moment. They may happen more in retrospect. But to me, however we get to that light, that's a gift that we are giving ourselves. And sometimes when things happen or that we're feeling, and we may be feeling, I don't know, inadequate or somehow we're not doing anything, and we give that same feeling onto somebody else. And it's called projection. I blame this person over here because they are doing exactly what I'm worried about. I can't face the fact that I'm worried about rejection. So I'll say, you know what, they're just rejecting. They're just repressing. I make other, and just dismiss it. And anytime we engage in those denials, or you hear someone else doing it, you can recognize. I think the ones that I recognize in others, and this is not because I say, no, you're doing this. That is not what any of us do. But you can still recognize that someone is in denial. You can recognize, and I would say in this center, I recognize denial, projection, and passive-aggressive most often. And so I just see it because I've managed to read enough about it and see all of those things, that light of knowledge. And it is not up to me to diagnose anyone else. So I'm saying this in general terms, and I could be wrong, I can always be wrong. But when the classic things present themselves, that is what I think at the time. And if you ever read enough about this, it will be interesting to see how you respond. And see, one of the gifts in life is to recognize what you may come to think of as limitations in your own experience and the way you are. Now, I'm going to use something really shallow, but it's actually real for me, is I don't like the color purple in clothing and in decor. I love flowers, but there's something about it. I have no idea why, but let me tell you, it's real. And so I feel it as something I don't like. So I'm just accepting the fact that I just don't like it, and I'm not putting it in my house. And if I buy a house that's purple, I'm going to paint it. I'm just going to get rid of it because I don't like it. I can live with myself when I do that. There are foods I don't like, And I eat what I like. I eat what's healthy for me. But if I don't like it, I'm not going to eat it. Can you do that? Sure you can. You don't have to do any of these things that you don't want to, and you could just accept the fact. Now, I'm using silly things, but there may be other things that are more serious, that you've come to terms with it, and I'm just not ready to do anything any differently. Do you realize that living with yourself the way you are sometimes is just fine until you're ready to do something else? And when you're ready, you'll know you're ready. Maybe that makes sense. But loving yourself just as you are, that's our job. And see, that's really what Quimby was about. He believed that love is that answer, the answer to all of life. I was reading someone else's prayer treatment this morning as part of my morning practice. And this woman, her name was Reverend Eleanor Richard. And she said, "I delight in seeing love everywhere, even when it comes in disguise." Don't you love that? So somebody's coming at you with something, it's just love in disguise. I want to remember that, and I had not read it before. See, that's really what we're talking about, finding ways to live life as it is. I can only work on me. I honestly can't work on you. And it's none of my business. I can share, and I can be open, but you are the only one that gets to tell you how to live your life. And I hope that every one of us, from the sound of my voice over and right here, that you take that responsibility, because when you do that, lots of things open up. There's nothing wrong with you. Do you believe that? There's nothing wrong with any of us. We're all just right where we are, and also understanding that life and we are always changing. Always changing. And we have the opportunity, as Ernest Holmes said, to meet that change with a song in my heart and with joy, a smile on my face. Because he says that nature will not let you stay in the same place every time. And change is what happens. And we see in nature, and isn't it wonderful how nature is just so rich in the spring with the spring green that we see. And as the summer wears on, sometimes things get a little worn. But that's part of the change. And then ultimately we go into fall, and then it all moves into winter. That's the way it is. And so we need to meet each change with that song in our heart and a smile on our face. That's what Ernest Holmes says. And Quimby has shown us that it's possible, just as Jesus said, all of these things I can do, you can do, and more of these things can you do. And Quimby said, you're right, I can. And he did. So, we've come to the end of our time, and I want us to know that whatever ideas from the last few minutes stir around in your consciousness, that each person is able to pick and choose what's just right for them in this moment and in the moments to come, because that's the right one. And so I am grateful to be in this place and to live this life that I embrace so fully. And I know that everyone can embrace life and fully, completely, and in every way. I'm grateful, and I can say, and so it is. So now we're going to engage in a little giving, or a lot of giving, maybe. Ruthie is one of our wonderful volunteers who is going to pass the plate, is going to do that. And we're going to give our affirmation. And I invite you to hold your hands, even if you give it online and you give it in another way. You're giving in some way. That's wonderful. And say this affirmation with all of us. Divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper all those who give and all those who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love. And so it is. Thank you. Does someone have a question or an idea? I am going to be teaching a Troward course starting in July. And it's called Consciousness and the Creative Process, which a lot of this is about. And so I'm really looking forward. So when I say my mind's been on parallel tracks, it's also been on that one and thinking about that. So if any of you, it's a course that will enable you to proceed toward practitionership, if that's something that you're interested in. And so there's a sign-up sheet out there, not to necessarily sign up for the class, but talk about preferences, in person or online, and different times of day. And because I'm exploring all the ways to teach this class, so as many people can take it as want to take it. So we can talk about that at another point. So does anyone have a question about anything? And there is the wonderful Mr. Grant Ackerman, who will offer you a microphone so we can all hear easily.
We do have a comment from online. Sydney Glass commented that Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science, was a patient of Quimby's in 1861, and Emma Curtis Hopkins was also a student of Eddy in 1883 before becoming a practitioner.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And she was a student of his, and she actually benefited from his healing. Although I don't know if Sydney's read this, but some more modern viewers or readers or thinkers are questioning how much she was influenced by Quimby, because looking at her theology, I question what I read, so I need to do a little bit more research, and Sydney may as well. But the lineage is definitely, as he says. Mary Baker Eddy was part of his group. The other two people were the Dressers, husband and wife, who claimed they were healed by Quimby. And then their son also became very well educated in the college university sense. He was a Harvard graduate, wrote books, and even into the 1930s, he wrote some definitive books on Quimby. And they're still, even those are not as easy to read as the Seal book, I'll just say that. But so there's a lot of data, but some of it is, see, what Mary Baker Eddy actually denied that he even cured her as she went on. Like, I did this by myself. She was saying that contemporary. She wasn't giving Quimby credit for that. Whereas Emma Curtis Hopkins, well, they parted ways because Emma Curtis Hopkins had her own mind, and Mary Baker Eddy was not allowing someone else to have their own mind. You know, how Ernest Holmes has, even our sanctuary is built open at the top, that we believe our teachings open at the top. Mary Baker Eddy was not open at the top, not at all. And so once she had somebody who was as gifted as Emma Curtis Hopkins, Emma just left. She started her own thing. So anyway, somebody else have a question?
Thank you, Reverend Katherine. That was great. Great reminders. It really does help to understand why we are the way we are. And instead of reacting to someone and something that you don't like because it presses your buttons from some issue from your past, like the thing that presses my buttons is people that have to be in control. They're real controlling, because those are the people in my life that have hurt me the most. So when somebody acts all bossy or, you know, tries to tell me what to do or whatever, I have to realize that their need to be in control is just from an insecure place. And that's where they're coming from. And instead of looking at them in a negative way, I kind of say a little prayer for them inside, and that really helps me. And it's very non-spiritual to live like that too, because you're not letting God, be your master and direct you and stuff. So thank you for the insight, and we all need those reminders, and we're all a work in progress, right?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And see, the other thing to remember too is when you say you respond to someone that you think is trying to control you, you also have to be open to the fact that maybe they're not trying to control you. It's their behavior that appears that way because it reminds you of someone that did that. It could be a parent, it could have been anyone. And that is another trigger that we have, that we just sort of shortcut from, somebody who's just really in charge of something, and as opposed to, trying to control you. And so it is, it's just interesting how we respond. And always there is a part of us that makes the decision to respond. There's something called the gap that we talk about, that place when the stimulus and the response. And in between that, and that's taught in practitioner courses in detail. It's a wonderful lesson. But there is that gap between stimulus and response. It's not long, but it's enough time for us to not react, even if we don't quite get it, but we cannot react. And maybe that's the first step. Not reacting, even though we want to, that gets us to the place where I really don't have to react. Maybe it's a continuum. I've come to think of more and more things like on a continuum. It's not this way, it's not this way, it's somewhere in between. So that's just a question that I'm putting out there to consider. But it is, I know that I don't have, I know that I had a parent who worked very hard to control me, very hard. I don't control so well. And so I was in trouble. I'm the kid in third grade who had to go outside and put her nose in the corner because I wouldn't do what I was told. So I'm just saying it was a personality thing. I'm not saying that if she was just trying to control her class, actually, and she thought I was disruptive. So there are a lot of ways we are, and all of those reasons. But see, I remember having my nose in the corner, definitely do. It wasn't fun because the other kids are walking down the hall, and I'm 8 years old, holding my face in like that. Any other questions? David waters our plants, and he does such a great job. And so I want to just thank David before he speaks for what he does.
Oh, thank you. You mentioned a class starting. Did you say October?
No, I didn't. I said it starts in July.
Oh,
the first
July.
class is going to be mid-July, but it's going to skip a Thursday, and then it's going to go into August. It's going to take all of August. It's 6 classes.
Do you know what day it'll be?
Do what now?
Do you know what day it'll be on?
Yes, it's on the 18th of July.
18th.
There's a clipboard out there with that part of it on it. It's going to have a lot of stuff in it. I'm going to throw a lot of different things, and so I typically use PowerPoints a lot when I teach because I fill in with lots of things. But I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of stuff that I've got to do yet. I'm going to throw in some other stuff from an outside source. Dennis Merritt Jones, which some of you may know, has a new book out when he's talking about the fears that can derail us in life, and I'm going to throw those in. They're not part of this course, but I'm going to throw that in as well.
Looking forward to it.
It's about consciousness. That's what this is. It's about how the spiritual process and how we contribute to that and how we participate in that process so that we're more in control of it. What were you going to say?
I'm just looking forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I really liked your talk about life and how things come about and how people can get triggered. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're mad at somebody, it means that sometimes we get triggered easily.
Yeah.
My dad was a police officer, so I had a lot of triggers when I was younger.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, we get triggered by many things, I think, depending on, you get triggered in your own home. Like somebody, you definitely do. And other people that you live with get triggered, and you can see it happening. And it's not something to laugh at, but it is something to recognize. Just recognizing is like shining a light. And that's what Seal is talking about that Quimby did. He understood this lack of understanding as darkness, as ignorance. And you've seen in the movies when we're talking about primitive people, like in the Ten Commandments, I'm thinking where they're depicting when Moses is trying to channel God, with these 10 commandments, and he comes down off the mountain, and these people are so afraid that they're going, Baal, Baal. They're worshiping the God they created out of something because they're afraid, and they can see this God that Moses is talking about. Where is he? And how come we're not getting on with our journey to find, to the land where we're supposed to be? How come we're not there? Your God is just not good enough, but Baal, because they think they can see it. Do you see? That's primitive versus civilized. But civilized, we just stopped believing in a wooden God, but we didn't stop needing to materialize ideas. And so that is what we do. We find ways, it's like this. And so whatever like this is personalized. It's what we think is like this. And so you just have to think that through, that process, to get to some truth. And we're all stumbling in our own darkness.
And
That's just the truth.
I want to add, my father was my greatest teacher, too. Yeah.
Well, some of the people that have been the most destructive in our whole civilization have been ones that were so sure that they knew what. They were not open to different ways of doing things. And of course, I am, in my treadmill time, I'm watching The Crown. This is in the last part of it. And boy, you see this resistance to change and change. It's just incredible what we will do to keep it the same and keep rationalizing what we're doing. And maybe it's even legitimate, but watching it unfold it's just something, it's almost sad in a way. It makes you feel like there's more to be seen. Anything else?
Thank you very much for this morning.
You're welcome.
You helped me cope with my personal life and believe in the divine power. To me, you're magic sent from heaven, because there is a lot of struggles in life, but you don't see the blessings. And when I'm here, I'm able to feel that there are more blessings than struggles.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I have to tell you, it was wonderful. Juneteenth was like that. They were full of blessings, and we made mistakes, and nobody cared. It was so full of blessings. You all are wonderful. I very much appreciate your being here. It is, things are changing in this center. You know that our new minister is coming. He won't be here until July the 15th, which is a Monday, and he will speak here on this platform on Sunday, the 21st of July, for the first time. I hope as many of us that can will be here to receive and to know as he takes a step into being only our fourth senior minister in 77 years. That's huge. It's just huge. And so he's going to be different from everyone else, and God bless that, because time is always changing. Everything is changing. And so we're just going to get in that flow. Again, thank you for being here. We'll see you Sunday.